It was a cold winter night, the kind where the wind howls like a pack of wolves outside your window, and the snow blankets everything in a deceivingly serene white. I was home alone, my family having gone to visit relatives in another town. I had stayed behind due to work commitments. The old house, usually so full of life, felt eerily empty and silent. The evening started off as usual. I made myself dinner, watched some TV, and then decided to head to bed early. As I lay in bed trying to sleep, the silence of the house seemed to grow heavier, almost suffocating. The wind's howling seemed to carry whispers with it, whispers that seemed too close for comfort. I tried to shake off the feeling, telling myself it was just the weather playing tricks on my mind. Around midnight, I was jolted awake by a loud bang. It sounded like it came from downstairs. My heart pounded in my chest as I lay still, listening. There was another bang, followed by what sounded like footsteps. I was frozen with fear. The idea that someone could be in the house was terrifying. After what felt like an eternity, I mustered up the courage to get out of bed. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept in my closet and slowly made my way to the door. The house was pitch dark, the only light coming from the moon shining through the windows. The shadows seemed to dance on the walls, creating ominous shapes. As I crept down the stairs, the floorboards creaking under my weight, the sense of dread grew stronger. The cold seemed to seep into my bones, making me shiver. I reached the bottom of the stairs and hesitated. The idea of confronting an intruder was terrifying, but the thought of hiding and not knowing was worse. I walked towards the living room, where I had heard the noises. The room was empty, but I could see that the back door was slightly ajar. Panic set in. Someone had been in the house. I quickly checked the rest of the downstairs, finding nothing amiss except for a few things knocked over in the kitchen. I decided to call the police, but when I picked up my phone, I realized it was dead. I had forgotten to charge it. I felt isolated and vulnerable, cut off from the outside world. I decided to go back upstairs to my room, lock the door, and wait for morning. As I climbed the stairs, I heard a noise that made my blood run cold. It was a soft whisper, coming from the end of the hallway. I froze, my grip tightening on the bat. The whispering continued, unintelligible but unmistakably human. I was sure now that someone was in the house with me. I crept towards the source of the sound, my heart pounding so loud I was sure it could be heard. As I reached the end of the hallway, I realized the whispering was coming from behind the door to the guest room. I slowly pushed the door open, ready to confront whoever was inside. But the room was empty. The whispering had stopped. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized the room was colder than the rest of the house. The window was wide open, the curtains fluttering in the wind. I quickly shut it, trying to shake off the feeling that something was very wrong. I spent the rest of the night huddled in my room, the door locked, jumping at every little sound. Morning couldn't come soon enough. When the first light of dawn finally broke through the darkness, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. The police arrived shortly after I called them. They found footprints in the snow leading up to the back door and then away into the woods behind the house. They said it was probably just a burglar, but they couldn't explain the whispering or the open window in the guest room. To this day, I'm not sure what happened that night. Was it just a burglar who fled when they realized I was home? Or was it something more sinister, something that couldn't be explained? The experience has stayed with me, a haunting reminder that sometimes the most terrifying horrors are the ones we can't understand. The chill of the winter night seeped into my bones, a stark contrast to the warmth of the fireplace that crackled in the living room. I was home alone, a rare occurrence since my family was usually bustling around the house. But tonight they had gone to visit relatives, leaving me to enjoy some solitary peace. Little did I know, the tranquility of the night would soon be shattered. The house, an old Victorian structure, had its quirks and creaks, but nothing prepared me for what happened next. As I settled into the couch, a sharp knock at the door jolted me. Glancing at the clock, it read 11:30 p.m. Who could it be at this hour? I wondered, a twinge of unease creeping into my heart. Approaching the door, I peered through the peephole but saw nothing but the swirling snow outside. Chalking it up to the wind, I returned to the living room. That's when the real terror began. The knocking turned into a relentless pounding, echoing through the empty halls. Each thud against the door felt like a hammer to my chest. I called out, "Who's there?" but was met with only the howling wind as a reply. The feeling of being watched, of not being alone, grew stronger. Frightened, I decided to check the windows. Through the frosty glass, I saw footprints in the snow leading up to the house, but none leading away. My heart raced. Someone was here, hiding in the shadows of the winter night. Rushing to the phone, I dialed the local sheriff, but the line crackled and died before I could connect. The realization that I was cut off from the outside world sent a shiver down my spine. The house felt like it was closing in on me. Every shadow seemed to twist and move, every noise a potential threat. I armed myself with a kitchen knife and cautiously moved through the house, checking every lock, every window. All were secure, but the feeling of dread persisted. As I turned off the lights to make it harder for anyone outside to see in, I noticed something odd. A faint light coming from the basement. The basement, which I had always avoided due to its dark and damp nature, now seemed to beckon me with its eerie glow. Gathering my courage, I slowly descended the creaking stairs. The light grew brighter, and I realized it was coming from an old television set that hadn't been used in years. Static flickered across the screen, casting ghostly shadows on the walls. It was then I heard a whisper, so faint I thought I imagined it. A voice not my own murmured from the darkness, "You are not alone." Panic set in. I raced upstairs, locking myself in my room. The night dragged on, filled with unexplained noises and an overwhelming sense of fear. Dawn couldn't come soon enough. When the sun finally rose, casting its light on the snow-covered landscape, I ventured outside. The footprints leading to the house were still there, but now I saw another set leading away. They were different, deeper, as if whatever had visited had left in a hurry. The local sheriff arrived later that morning. He listened to my story with a mixture of concern and skepticism. A search of the property revealed nothing out of the ordinary, but the experience left a lasting impression on me. I later learned that many years ago, a previous owner had disappeared on a winter night, never to be found. Some in the town whispered that the house was haunted, cursed even. I had always dismissed these tales as nothing more than local lore, but after that night, I couldn't help but wonder. The incident remains a mystery, a chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying horrors are those that lurk just beyond the realm of explanation, waiting in the shadows of a winter night. It was a cold December night when my parents decided to visit my aunt, who lived in the next town over. I, being a 17-year-old who relished the idea of independence, opted to stay home alone. Our house, a quaint two-story building nestled in the suburbs, always felt cozy to me, but that night, it felt different. Emptier, almost eerie. The evening started ordinarily enough. I made myself some dinner, watched TV, and then decided to play some video games. The wind howled outside, a fierce orchestra against the quiet of the house. It must have been around 11 p.m. when I first heard it. A faint scratching sound like nails against wood coming from the back door. Thinking it was just a tree branch, I ignored it and continued with my game. But the sound persisted, growing louder and more desperate. My heart began to race. I muted the TV and listened. The scratching stopped, replaced by a soft, deliberate knocking. I can't explain why, but a sense of dread washed over me. No one should have been at our door at this hour. Gathering my courage, I tiptoed to the kitchen where I could see the back door. I switched on the porch light. There, standing on the other side of the glass, was a figure, cloaked in darkness. My blood ran cold. The figure knocked again, slowly, deliberately. I couldn't see their face, but I felt their eyes boring into me. Frozen in fear, I didn't move. I couldn't. The figure knocked again, harder this time. Then, without warning, they started jiggling the doorknob, trying to get in. I found my voice and yelled, "Who are you? What do you want?" There was no answer, just the continuous jiggling of the doorknob. Panicking, I ran upstairs to my room, locked the door, and grabbed my phone to call the police. As I was dialing, I heard a loud crash from downstairs, the sound of glass breaking. They had broken in. My heart thudded in my chest like a drum as I whispered to the 911 operator, explaining the situation. The operator's calm voice instructed me to stay on the line and hide. I crouched in my closet, trying to muffle my breathing. I could hear footsteps downstairs, heavy and slow, as if the intruder was savoring the hunt. The footsteps grew louder, closer, until they stopped right outside my door. I held my breath. The doorknob turned slowly, but the lock held. Then a low, guttural laugh seeped through the door, sending shivers down my spine. The intruder spoke in a raspy, taunting voice. "I know you're in there. Come out, wherever you are." I was paralyzed with fear, tears streaming down my face. The operator's voice in my ear was the only thing keeping me from screaming. She assured me that the police were on their way, but in that moment, they felt like a world away. Suddenly, the footsteps retreated, moving back downstairs. I didn't dare to move, not even when I heard the distant sound of sirens. It wasn't until I heard the police loudly announcing themselves that I dared to emerge from my hiding place. The police found the back door shattered, but no sign of the intruder. They said it was a miracle he hadn't found me. They took my statement and promised to patrol the area. My parents came home shortly after, horrified and grateful to find me safe. To this day, I don't know who that person was or what they wanted. The incident left me with an unshakable sense of vulnerability, a realization that the safety of our homes can be so easily compromised. That night changed me. I never stay home alone anymore, especially not on cold winter nights. It was a frigid winter evening when my parents decided to visit my aunt, who lived a few towns over, leaving me alone in our century-old house. I was 17, thrilled at the prospect of having the house to myself. Little did I know this night would etch an indelible mark of terror in my memory. The house, a Victorian-style mansion, had always carried an eerie vibe, especially after dark. The creaking floors and the wind howling through the gaps in the old windows often sounded like whispered conversations. I shrugged off these thoughts as I settled in the living room, a fire crackling in the fireplace providing a comforting warmth against the howling winter wind outside. Hours ticked by as I lost myself in a video game, the only light in the room coming from the flickering TV screen and the dying fire. It was nearing midnight when I decided to head to bed. That's when I heard it, a faint, almost inaudible whisper. "Hello!" I called out, thinking maybe my parents had returned early. No response. I chalked it up to my imagination and headed upstairs. My room felt unusually cold, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones. I quickly jumped into bed, pulling the covers up to my chin. That's when the whispers started again, clearer this time, like someone was in the room with me. My heart pounded against my chest. I mustered the courage to look around, but the room was empty. Trying to calm my nerves, I reminded myself that old houses make noises. Just as I was about to close my eyes, a loud bang echoed from downstairs, jolting me upright. This was no ordinary house noise. I grabbed my phone, its light my only guide, and slowly made my way towards the staircase. Each step creaked under my weight as I descended, the sound piercing the eerie silence. The whispers seemed to follow me, growing louder with each step. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. Reaching the ground floor, I noticed the front door was wide open, letting in the icy winter air. Confusion and fear gripped me. Had I forgotten to close it? No, I distinctly remembered locking it. My heart raced as I moved towards the door to close it. That's when I saw it. Footprints in the snow, leading up to the house but not away. Someone was here, inside, with me. Panic surged through me. I closed the door, locking it, and quickly scanned the room. Nothing seemed out of place. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, as if urging me to discover their source. I followed the sound to the basement door. The air turned colder as I approached it, my breath visible in the dim light of my phone. With a shaky hand, I opened the door. The stairs descended into darkness, the whispers beckoning me down. Each step felt like a descent into an unknown abyss. As I reached the bottom, the temperature dropped drastically. My phone's light flickered, barely illuminating the old furniture and boxes stored there. Then I saw it, a shadowy figure standing in the corner, barely visible. My heart stopped. "Who are you?" I managed to stammer. The figure didn't move, didn't respond, just stood there, watching. Fear rooted me to the spot. Then in a split second, the figure rushed towards me. I screamed, stumbling backwards, and raced up the stairs. I slammed the basement door shut, locking it. Panting, heart racing, I leaned against the door. The whispers stopped. Everything was eerily silent. I didn't dare move until the first light of dawn peeked through the windows. When my parents returned later that morning, I recounted the night's events. They were skeptical but concerned. We checked the basement together. Nothing was out of place and no sign of any intruder. Later, I learned from a neighbor that the previous owner's son had mysteriously disappeared one winter night, never to be found. Some say he got lost in the blizzard, others whispered about darker fates. His room? It was mine now. That night changed everything for me. I never stayed alone in that house again. The whispers, the shadow, the chilling presence, they remain etched in my memory, a haunting reminder of the night I was not alone in that old house on a winter night.